General Hospital spoilers reveal that Colette's betrayal unfolded with a calculated coldness that now threatens to bring down one of the most sensitive and dangerous missions the WSB has authorized in recent years. What began as a series of small suspicions, a look held too long, a phone call taken behind closed doors, has now crystallized into undeniable treason. The moment she relayed critical information to Pascal regarding the identities of two undercover agents posing as a married couple under the names Mr. and Mrs. Nash, she crossed a threshold from questionable loyalty into outright sabotage. Vaughn and Jocelyn, both carefully embedded in the field and risking their lives under a fragile alias, were immediately placed in lethal jeopardy as a result of Colette's actions. This was not a mistake. It was not the heat of the moment. It was a deliberate transmission of confidential intelligence to an outside operative, and the implications are staggering. By confirming their presence at the Five Poppies Resort and updating Pascal with active surveillance data, Colette did more than blow their cover. She destabilized the mission's structural integrity from within and destroyed the chain of trust that Brennan had worked so ruthlessly to establish. Vaughn and Jocelyn were not simply players in a scripted deception. They were critical assets navigating hostile territory, each step laced with calculated risk. To be exposed mid-mission is not just a complication, it is a death sentence disguised as a breach. And now, because of Colette, the WSB's top agents are fighting for survival in an arena that should have been neutralized under Brennan's guidance but has now become a death trap of misinformation, hidden adversaries, and shifting loyalties. What makes Colette's betrayal all the more devastating is the fact that she operated under Brennan's direct oversight, moving as a trusted operative within his circle. Privy to classified mission briefings, tactical deployments, and field agent tracking systems, she was given access to information only a select few were allowed to handle, information that, if placed in the wrong hands, could unravel years of intelligence work and compromise the safety of countless operatives positioned throughout the region. And that is precisely what she did. By leaking Vaughn and Jocelyn's cover, she didn't just jeopardize a single mission. She sent a message to Brennan, to the WSB, and to anyone paying attention, that she is no longer aligned with their objectives and has chosen a path that places her in direct opposition to the very agency that trained and empowered her. Whether Colette is acting under coercion, blackmail, ideological divergence, or a deeper allegiance to an unnamed foreign entity remains to be seen. But the result is the same. She has become a liability of the highest order, and Brennan, once her commanding officer and possibly her confidant, is now faced with the crushing reality that someone within his own ranks has betrayed everything he built from the inside out. The psychological implications for Brennan are impossible to ignore. Known for his unshakable discipline, strategic genius, and intolerance for failure, Brennan has long operated on a code that demands loyalty above all else. To be betrayed by Colette, someone handpicked for her skill, discretion, and apparent commitment to the cause, is not just a professional affront, it's a deep, personal violation. Brennan is a man who anticipates betrayal from enemies but never expects it from within. And now, that very breach has brought him to a precipice, forcing him to question his instincts, his command structure, and every strategic decision that allowed Colette to move freely within the operation for so long. The stakes are not just operational, they are existential. If Brennan cannot identify and eliminate the rot within his command, then the entire foundation of his leadership collapses under the weight of deception. But Brennan's response is unlikely to be driven by emotion. He is not the kind of man who yells, who pleads, or who gives second chances. He is a tactician, a strategist, a commander who believes that loyalty is not earned twice. With Vaughn and Jocelyn in mortal danger and Pascal one step ahead, Brennan's window for action is closing rapidly. Colette's betrayal demands consequences, and Brennan is the kind of man who enforces consequence with surgical precision. It is no longer a matter of whether Colette will face punishment, it is a question of when and how. Brennan may send a message of strength by locking her in Steinmauer, turning her into a symbol of what happens when operatives turn against their agency. But more likely, Brennan will take a quieter, more lethal approach. He may engineer her disappearance, orchestrate an accident, or call upon his most trusted enforcers to ensure she vanishes without a trace. Colette has not merely compromised an assignment, she has endangered lives, sabotaged trust, and become a living breach that cannot be allowed to remain open. And what of Vaughn and Jocelyn, the operatives left scrambling in the aftermath of Colette's betrayal? Their survival now depends on improvisation, evasion, and luck. Jocelyn, the daughter of Carly Spencer, is no stranger to danger. But nothing could have prepared her for being sold out from within her own agency. Vaughn, equally dedicated, now must protect not only the mission but his partner, someone who was never supposed to be compromised like this. As they navigate a terrain now poisoned by misinformation, surveillance, and lethal threats, they are forced to confront the brutal reality that their lives were gambled away by someone they were never supposed to suspect. Colette's betrayal has reshaped the battlefield, turning allies into liabilities and truth into a weapon wielded by the wrong hands. And beneath all this chaos lies the undeniable truth that Colette is not simply a rogue agent, she is the catalyst for a larger implosion. Her betrayal is the first domino in a chain reaction that could tear through the WSB's operational networks like wildfire. Every safe house she accessed, every password she entered, every report she read, each one is now suspect. The fallout from her exposure could extend far beyond Vaughn and Jocelyn, pulling other agents into jeopardy and unraveling long-established intelligence corridors. Brennan knows this. The WSB knows this. And they will act accordingly. Colette may have convinced herself that she was doing what needed to be done, that betraying Brennan and the WSB was justified by some greater cause or necessity. But that illusion is collapsing fast. Her name is now marked. Her movements are being watched. Every step she takes from this point forward will be shadowed by the knowledge that her life is no longer hers to control. She has made herself a target, not just of Brennan's wrath but of the entire intelligence community she once served. She cannot undo what she has done. The line has been crossed. The war she sparked can no longer be contained. And perhaps that was always her plan. Perhaps Colette believes in chaos more than she ever believed in loyalty. But chaos, while easy to ignite, is much harder to survive. She has gambled everything, her freedom, her life, her legacy, on the belief that she could outsmart the man she betrayed. And in Brennan, she may have chosen the one opponent no traitor ever escapes. Her future, once paved with possibility, now narrows into a corridor lined with consequences, and each step echoes louder than the last. In the world of General Hospital, betrayals are often personal. But Colette's betrayal has reached a scale that transcends personal pain. It threatens to rewrite the rules of the game itself. And as Brennan prepares to retaliate, as Vaughn and Jocelyn fight to survive, and as the WSB begins to repair the cracks in its once infallible armor, one thing becomes certain. Colette Moreau has lit a fuse that can no longer be extinguished. And whatever comes next will be brutal, final, and unforgettable. The unfolding narrative within General Hospital is rapidly shifting into a darker and more calculated phase, marked by a series of adjustments in Brennan's behavior that reveal the depth of his obsession with control, security, and the elimination of betrayal. Every recent move he has made is no longer merely tactical but driven by an increasingly personal intensity. One rooted in the sense of violation he experienced upon discovering that Colette, once a trusted asset within his inner circle, has become a traitor. This is no longer just an intelligence failure or a disruption to a mission plan, it is, for Brennan, a personal affront and a dangerous threat to the very foundations of the system he operates within. The betrayal has forced a recalibration in Brennan's methods and mindset, pushing him from a role of overseer to that of executioner. The decision to eliminate Colette is not impulsive, it is the result of a cold, ruthless reordering of priorities. Colette, by exposing Vaughn and Jocelyn under the alias of Mr. and Mrs. Nash, has committed an offense that, in Brennan's eyes, can only be resolved through her eradication. Her actions not only compromised a mission but endangered lives Brennan was tasked with protecting, particularly Jocelyn, whose lineage and involvement add layers of complexity that Brennan cannot afford to ignore. In protecting Jocelyn and Vaughn, Brennan is no longer operating strictly under WSB protocols. He is taking matters into his own hands, driven by a singular need to correct the fracture Colette caused. His obsession with order has always been veiled beneath operational efficiency and mission discipline, but now it is boiling to the surface. What Colette triggered was not just a shift in mission status but the awakening of a dangerous pattern in Brennan, a pattern of relentless, calculated vengeance. For him, the equation is clear. Colette's betrayal equals vulnerability. And vulnerability must be eradicated. He does not see this as murder. He sees it as preservation. Of the mission. Of control. Of his carefully managed world where trust is rare and disobedience is fatal. The choice to eliminate Colette is not merely a solution to an intelligence leak, it's a ritualistic cleansing of a flaw in the system. Brennan has always viewed betrayal as contagion. Left untreated, it spreads. And in eliminating Colette, he isn't just removing a saboteur, he is re-establishing dominance over the fragile network he commands. But beneath that calculated precision lies something darker, an obsession. A haunting fixation that now governs his every move. The obsession isn't just with protecting Jocelyn and Vaughn. It's with reclaiming the sense of invincibility that Colette's actions shattered. His vengeance is laced with fear, and fear, in Brennan's hands, becomes deadly precision. This new obsession doesn't just manifest in the planning of Colette's demise, it infects everything around him. He grows colder, more withdrawn, more meticulous. The way he reviews intel changes. The silence between his words stretches longer. His glances linger too long on faces he no longer trusts. The weight of betrayal lingers in his posture. As if the very air he breathes has become laced with suspicion. Brennan is not a man who reacts with emotion, but his restraint makes his transformation even more terrifying. Every move is considered. Every step deliberate. The mission may be back on track, but Colette's presence, even as a ghost in the system, must be erased. Not suspended. Not detained. Erased. And so, the plan begins. Quietly. With the reactivation of old contacts. With instructions passed through trusted proxies. With surveillance turned inward. Colette may believe she has time. That she can explain, bargain, or escape. But Brennan is already 3 steps ahead. Her exit has already been designed. Her timeline already narrowed. Every location she visits, every line she speaks. Every signal she sends, Brennan is watching. Not with rage, but with resolution. Not to punish, but to complete what he now considers a necessary purge. For Jocelyn and Vaughn. The stakes could not be higher. Brennan's actions, while meant to protect, also cast a shadow over them. If his obsession deepens, will he cross lines even further? Will he use them as bait? Will his protectiveness morph into control? These are the questions the WSB cannot afford to ask aloud but must consider in private. Because Brennan is not acting out of duty anymore, he's acting from obsession. An obsession, even when born from loyalty, can consume everything in its path. As the story continues to evolve, one truth becomes clear: Brennan is changing. The man once revered for his calm authority is now driven by a haunting need to restore what Colette destroyed. He will not rest. He will not forgive. He will not allow weakness to remain. Colette's days are numbered, not because of emotion, but because she disrupted the one thing Brennan values above all else: control. And now, his obsession to restore that control will make him more dangerous than any enemy the WSB has ever faced. A shocking new revelation is poised to shatter everything audiences thought they knew about the relationships within General Hospital, as it is now being confirmed that Vaughn is, in fact, the biological son of Jack Brennan. This revelation detonates like a time-delayed explosion, retroactively altering the context of every interaction between them and redefining Brennan's motivations with a raw emotional weight that had been hidden beneath layers of cold professionalism. This truth was never meant to be exposed, not to the WSB, not to Vaughn, not to anyone, but the chaos unfolding at the Five Poppies has forced everything into the light. Vaughn's identity was always cloaked in strategic purpose, selected for his skills, his loyalty, his quiet resilience. But now the mission has gone off course. Vaughn has been shot. Left bleeding and unconscious during a critical operation, and Brennan is no longer operating as a handler or a superior officer. He is a father, one whose instinct for preservation is now turning towards sacrifice in the most radical and devastating way imaginable. What follows is not just a shift in narrative, but an upheaval of the foundational logic of the show itself. Brennan, known for his strict detachment and ruthless enforcement of discipline, is about to make the most irrational and emotionally charged decision of his career. He will offer his own organs, his own body, to save Vaughn. This is not simply a matter of medical compatibility. It is an act of penance, of paternal instinct, of spiraling obsession. The man who has orchestrated assassinations and crushed rebellions with a whisper is now standing in an operating room, prepared to give part of himself to a son who never knew he shared Brennan's blood. This is not redemption. It is madness wearing the mask of love. And in true Brennan fashion, even this deeply personal decision is wrapped in secrecy, misinformation, and manipulation. He will not tell Vaughn the truth. He may not even live long enough to explain. The story of Vaughn's injury at 5 Poppies is already one of the most chaotic and violent arcs in recent General Hospital history, but with this revelation, it spirals into something far more operatic, a collision between espionage and legacy, between buried paternity and life-threatening stakes. Brennan's willingness to die so that Vaughn may live is not born from traditional fatherhood. It is an obsession with legacy, with ensuring that some part of himself continues even if the rest is lost in the shadows of betrayal and war. In this twisted logic, Brennan sees the act of organ donation as his final command, his ultimate mission. This is no longer about the WSB. It is no longer about orders or duty. It is about a man who has spent his life eliminating threats, now trying to preserve the one person who represents the last fragment of humanity left inside him. But this decision also marks one of the most dangerous adjustments in the psychological profile of Brennan. To those around him, he is unraveling. His reasoning has shifted from tactical to emotional. His priorities are no longer aligned with the agency. He is exposing secrets, endangering protocols, and compromising his own operational value, all for a son who never asked to be saved, and who may not even forgive him if he survives and discovers the truth. The emotional fallout from this act of sacrifice could splinter Vaughn permanently. To wake up not only recovering from a gunshot wound but with the knowledge that the man he has served under is also his father, and is now either dead or permanently damaged from the operation, is a psychological burden that could tear Vaughn apart. And then there's the question of who else knows. If Brennan's organ donation is approved and performed quietly, the WSB Medical Division must be complicit. They must know the truth or at least suspect it. There may be a small circle of operatives protecting this secret, but secrets within the WSB rarely stay hidden for long. Carly Spencer may become involved, given her connection to Jocelyn and her rising suspicion that something far more personal is brewing behind Brennan's cold facade. If she discovers the truth, or worse, if Jocelyn does, the repercussions will ripple outward, igniting a secondary wave of emotional conflict that no one is prepared to handle. This entire storyline, the secret paternity, the bloodshed at 5 Poppies, the self-sacrificial donation, signals one of the most deranged narrative adjustments General Hospital has undertaken in years. It is bold, it is emotionally harrowing, and it is completely in line with the descent of Brennan from strategist to emotionally unstable father figure. The man who once ruled with logic is now ruled by legacy. And in his obsession to preserve that legacy, he may destroy what little remains of himself, his reputation, and the world he once controlled so effortlessly. What comes next is impossible to predict. If Brennan survives the operation, he will be physically weakened and emotionally compromised, a shell of the man who once commanded with silence and fear. If he dies, Vaughn will inherit a legacy he never asked for, a bloodline soaked in secrets and betrayal. Either outcome sets the stage for a new generation of conflict, where Vaughn must navigate the truth of who he is and what it cost to save him. This is not just a story about father and son. It is a story about madness, about how love, when buried beneath decades of lies, explodes not with healing, but with chaos. Brennan's decision to save Vaughn may be seen by some as heroic. But beneath that illusion lies the truth. This is the final act of a man haunted by his own shadow, desperate to leave something behind before the darkness swallows him whole. And as the truth inevitably leaks out, as the WSB grapples with the consequences, and as Vaughn recovers under the weight of a father's sacrificial obsession, the story of 5 Poppies will no longer be remembered as a failed mission. It will be remembered as the place where everything broke, where madness became mercy, and where the legacy of Brennan was rewritten in blood. The secrets that Pascal and his elusive superior are harboring have now begun to unravel into something far more volatile and far-reaching than anyone inside the WSB could have anticipated. What was once believed to be a routine breach or a low-level threat has now escalated into an expansive and highly orchestrated destabilization campaign. One that threatens not only the integrity of current missions but the very future of global intelligence balance. These secrets, buried beneath layers of encrypted communication, false flags, and covert surveillance, are not just operational anomalies, they are blueprints for destruction, carefully designed by a shadow force whose motivations remain cloaked in darkness. With each passing day, the ripple effects grow more violent, more brazen, and more personal, proving that the attack is no longer theoretical, it is active, coordinated, and terrifying in its reach. Pascal is no longer a rogue agent operating in the margins. He is the instrument of a calculated campaign, one whose orchestration goes far beyond mere revenge or financial gain. The man above him, still unnamed, still invisible, holds the kind of power that allows chaos to be manufactured with surgical precision. And the decisions made in this hidden hierarchy are now manifesting as direct threats to the lives of operatives in the field, including those thought to be untouchable. The recent infiltration at the 5 Poppies resort, the ambush that left Vaughn fighting for his life, the exposure of Jocelyn's alias, all are now understood to be not isolated incidents but pieces of a broader plan that Pascal and his superior are executing with terrifying efficiency. This is no longer a game of information, it is a war of annihilation. And at the center of it all lies an obsession, an unrelenting drive to dismantle Brennan's operations, to unmask the weaknesses of the WSB, and to fracture the institutional core of intelligence command from within. The obsession is no longer quiet. It is not contained in darkened rooms or coded exchanges. It is erupting in real time through ambushes, leaks, betrayals, and psychological warfare. It is erupting in the destruction of identities, in the collapse of cover stories, and in the slow, calculated breakdown of field agents who can no longer trust their own shadow. What makes this threat more terrifying than anything before is the precision with which it is being deployed. Pascal is not operating on impulse. Every move is rehearsed. Every betrayal is timed. Every violent escalation is part of a script that no one inside the WSB has seen the full outline of, except maybe Brennan, who is beginning to suspect that what they are facing is not a typical adversary but a new kind of warlord. One who commands from the shadows without ever stepping into the light. One who uses operatives like Pascal not as soldiers, but as extensions of his own paranoia, his own trauma, his own obsession with dismantling the systems that once exiled him or humiliated him. The identity of this superior remains a mystery, but the consequences of his strategies are becoming increasingly visible and irreversible. The obsession that drives Pascal's superior is bleeding into every cell of the story, into every turn of the investigation. Brennan's instincts, once clear, are now blurred by this new kind of madness, a madness that is infectious, that spreads through silence, fear, and hesitation. The recent attacks are not about tactical gains. They are psychological strikes designed to destabilize the mind before the body. They are warnings disguised as executions, and the message is becoming painfully clear: no one is safe. No secret is safe. And those who think they understand the game are already several moves behind. This is one of the most frightening developments in General Hospital's current arc, because it marks a shift from espionage to obsession, from intelligence to ideology. It is no longer about protecting assets or uncovering double agents. It is about the slow, Methodical collapse of trust on every level. Vaughn's shooting was just the opening move. Jocelyn's exposure is a warning shot. The real target is not any one agent, it is the system itself. And Pascal, under the guidance of a figure who may be orchestrating far more than the WSB realizes, has become the perfect vessel for that destruction. This obsession, now fully unleashed, is not going to burn out. It will only grow hungrier. More surgical. More personal. Brennan knows this. He feels it. And though he is now haunted by his own guilt, his past decisions, and his growing vulnerability, he is perhaps the only one who can trace the pattern back to its source. The problem is, the source may know Brennan just as well, if not better. And if that's true, Brennan may already be walking into the final trap designed specifically for him. A trap baited with his past, triggered by his weakness, and detonated through the people he cares about most. This is no longer a battle of intelligence. It is the eruption of an obsession that has been waiting years to explode, and now that it has, the only certainty is that blood will follow.